This is Seasons of Discontent with your hosts Rick Snyder and Matt Combs.
Welcome to Seasons of Discontent. Yeah, we're back. Episode 7, Season 10, brought to you by Rick Snyder's Washington on YouTube. And I'm Rick Snyder.
I'm Matt.
And we're back discussing all things Washington life and sports as part of the mighty Rick Snyder empire. So tune in. Hit that thanks button down below. It looks like the dollar sign. Half of all profits won't be given to Matt, so make sure you hand in something there.
Just like FedEx, all the sponsorships have been pulled.
Yeah. Well, so lots of it going on. We're only doing this one, and we'll be back come training camp into July. I haven't seen the date on that yet on there, but the draft is there. I gave him a B on the draft. You know, it's funny. I looked at the post had everybody's team grades, and pretty much the whole league. I didn't see an A, and I didn't see an F, but it was pretty much everybody was a B or a C. So I guess everyone was happy. I gave him a B because they didn't get an offensive tackle early enough to have confidence in it. And you traded with Philadelphia, which never trade in the division because you'll have to eat it twice a year, you know, if it goes badly. Yeah, you got an extra pick in the second round for a tight end. Maybe he's a nice tight end, but he's not a pass-catching tight end. So, I mean, really, after the first round, they got some role players, people they can plug in to do some things, but they didn't get starters, you know. So that's why I just left it as a B.
Yeah, the thing with Philly really was a bummer at the end of the day because of who they took. I mean, the white cornerback Lejeune is supposed to be, you know, very high on everybody's draft position, and they think he's going to turn out to be a beast. I'm kind of with you. You know, after all the talk and all the misdirection and everything, they still went with Jayden Daniels, which is where we expected them to go. You know, the Newton pick in round 2, the first round 2 pick, kind of seemed out of left field, but I understand why they did it. The kid had a first round grade. He fell into the second, and we never know what's going to happen with John Allen. You know, John Allen has been discontent in the past. They may choose to move on from him at the end of the year. Maybe Phidarian Mathis is not ready to play and he is not going to be on this team. So there's his replacement. You know what I mean? Yeah, but yeah, I guess I'll stick with a B. I like Brandon Coleman. I think he can be a starting left tackle, but I don't believe he is a starting left tackle right now. I think that's why I honestly, I think they're going to go through minicamp and try and figure out what they got.
Yeah. All right. So we start off with Daniels, the number 2 pick overall. I kind of thought they might be jumping off him at the very end with some things I heard, but no, they stayed with him. You know, and people say, "Oh, you hate Daniels." No, I don't hate Daniels at all. You know, I think from day one, he's probably better prepared to start than McCarthy and May. But if this team is being built for 3 years from now, I wonder if May will be the better guy then or McCarthy. I like McCarthy because he wins. He's probably not as good as the other two, but they did consider him seriously. But Daniels, if we're going to say JD5 is the second coming of RG3, let's just hope it doesn't end the same way. You know, the scrambling quarterbacks, they're great if you have them, and if they stay healthy, it just doesn't happen much. And now 17 games. Yeah, everybody needs a second and third quarterback. I did like how they signed Notre Dame quarterback Sam Hartman, only because this guy, to be honest, is so good looking that a lot of people are going to be clamoring for him. And once again, we always yell for backup quarterbacks to play. It's a needless distraction there, but they paid him enough that Jake Fromm is not from here anymore. You know, it was kind of a strange pick, but I think Daniels overall, the potential is there, and that's what you've got to go for with the second pick.
And I think Jayden Daniels actually in the long run will have more of an upside than a Drake May or a JJ McCarthy. I think, honestly, May is not ready to start right now, and I think that's why New England signed Jacoby Brissett to be their starter this year. I think May sits for a year. Jayden, I believe, is ready to play now, and I actually believe that there is more upside with Jayden. I believe as long as he stays healthy, he needs to put on a little bit of weight. But I think there's more of an upside and a longer term success with Jaden Daniels. JJ wins. I know that. I understand that, but there's a reason that JJ, he wasn't one of the highly touted guys. He was in that top 5 discussion, but after everybody said after Caleb Williams, it was a big drop to Jaden Daniels and Drake May, 1A, 1B, and then it was an even bigger drop. But you know what, Rick? As long as we didn't do what the Falcons did and reach for a quarterback at number 9 that is definitely not ready to start in Michael Penix.
That had to be the biggest surprise of the first round.
People are calling that the biggest bust in draft history. And the kid hadn't even played yet. I mean, he could go out and win 2 Super Bowls, but at the end of the day, Atlanta paid Kirk Cousins over $100 million, and they drafted his replacement. Now, we've heard that there's possible sanctions coming out of Atlanta, so they wanted to get this kid now because they knew they couldn't get a quarterback next year in the first round because they won't have a first-round pick. So apparently there's tampering allegations coming out of Atlanta when it comes to Kirk.
Yeah, normally you'd say, well, the rookie be ready because you never know you can play. But you can say this about Kirk. He's not, doesn't get knocked out much.
Mm-hmm.
He has, we had the Achilles, whatever. But so you never know. I mean, in this league, you really need 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah, and especially because there's talk of going to an 18-game season, you're definitely going to need two top flight quarterbacks. I mean, obviously one is going to be a starter, but you got to have your backup right there. And I think that's, the writing was on the wall that they were going towards Daniels. I think when they signed Mariota in the offseason, we haven't really got to talk about the free agency moves that much, but the Mariota can be a good mentor, I think, for this kid. Mariota has a similar skill set. Obviously Jaden is a little bit better. But Mariota does have the tendency to run to avoid a situation, and he also has a pretty decent arm. So I think he's a good mentor for Jaden, but this is Jaden Daniels' team as long as he's healthy, I think, going into week 1.
So in round 2, Johnny Newton, thank God they didn't use his real first name. They have so many guys I can't say their names. I feel like Tank McNamara anymore. But Johnny Newton, defensive tackle, they needed a third guy. You can never have enough good players. I don't care what position, but that did surprise me.
Mm-hmm.
But, last year, remember, I was thinking, wow, they deep at defensive end. Oh, they traded 2 guys, 2 more got hurt. They had no one left after midseason. So, it's okay to build depth. And if they thought he was a real value, okay. I don't think there was an offensive tackle there.
Mm-hmm.
So many of the guys were already gone. I mean, they were taking centers in the first round. So, I mean, at that point, they did try to trade up. I never heard what the trade was, but they did try to trade up to get somebody. But at that point, I guess you abandon your plan for offensive tackle there and just go get the best player. And he seems to be that.
Yeah, there was a rumor that they tried to jump back into round 1, but it would have cost next year's first round pick. And I don't think Adam was ready to do that. There's one thing, and I know we're going to go over all the draft pick, but there's one thing that's very apparent with this draft. This is a marathon. Adam Peters and company are ready for the long haul. This was not a quick fix situation as it has been in the past when it comes to Washington. And we saw that in free agency. We saw it in the draft. This is a long-term commitment that these guys are making for at least the 5 years that Dan Quinn is here. So, yeah, I like the Newton pick. It was very surprising, but once again, I mean, there's, they signed a kid from Dallas. But you got to look at a guy like Fedarian Mathis. That's a 2nd-round pick, so you're not ready to give up on that guy. But he's also been hurt 2 years in a row. It's a guy that can't stay on the field. Actually, what is probably only seen 3 games of live action, and he was a rotational player. I mean, you got to have the guys, and this kid's a stud. Like I said, this was a projected 1st-round pick. With the second round pick, how do you say this? Saint Rilsty? Saint Rilstrill?
You're asking the wrong guy on that.
I'm going to call him Mike. Cornerback Mike.
I was glad you were attempting to say his name instead of me.
Hey, Rick, I really wanted them to go for Kool-Aid at this point, Kool-Aid McKinstry from Alabama, because I wanted a secondary that was a combined Kool-Aid and Juice. Because you still have Juice on the other side, right? Saint Juiced.
Yeah.
At this you could have Kool-Aid and Saint Juiced.
But this guy's supposed to be a really good nickel. Okay, but that's not a starter. That's a position, a we have there a nickel maybe a third of the time. So there, you still wanted to get a guy you thought would be on the main guy.
I agree,
So,
but however, I mean, they lost Kendall Fuller. Kendall Fuller was a nickel. They signed Kendall Fuller in free agency as a nickel. He did end up being a starter a lot of the time. But I think the one thing that stands out with this kid is his toughness and his leadership ability. And there's a theme here. We'll get to when we get to the end. There's a theme with all of these guys that I noticed, and I know you did as well.
all right. So then we go the other second round pick, the third one. This team had 6 picks in the top 100. No team in NFL history has done that since the 1970 common merger. So you think you'd get a lot of guys. But, I mean, they got a tight end here out of Kansas State, Ben Sinnott, who people like him. There's a blocker. And so I needed a pass-catching tight end. And then while he's done some of that, that's not what he's going to really do here. So, again,
I wouldn't put it past him. This is a guy that caught 10 touchdowns in the red zone.
I mean, hey, good. If he pulls that off, then it was a good pick. But
I mean,
otherwise,
if first game of the season, what's the one thing that this team has not been able to do in the past decade? Score from the damn red zone. I don't care what the quarterback, who the running back, or who the head coach is. This team has not been able to score in the red zone. If first game of the season, they're out lined up in the red zone and everybody expects this kid to be out there as a blocker and he opens up as a pass catcher for a touchdown, I'll take it. I mean, sure. Is he Jordan Reed? Is he Chris Cooley? Is he, Vernon Davis or any other top flight pass catching tight end that we've had in for this team? No. But I also think that it's kind of along the lines of the Jaden Daniels thing. And this is along with the theme. I think you can develop him. This was, there was a huge fall offs in tight end. Once the Raiders snagged a kid from Bowers from Georgia, I think he went to Georgia. Once he was gone, there was a huge drop off in tight end, but this was the second ranked tight end on the board. So you can't blame him for at least trying.
all right. Brandon Coleman was the third round pick from TCU. I thought he was a tackle. That's what he's always really played. And the NFL is going, he's a guard. And I'm like, wait a minute. But then Adam Peters says he's a tackle. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what that craziness was, but could he be the opening day one? I think Cornelius Lucas would be the opening day left tackle, unless this guy just plays great in the offseason camps and regular and preseason. I give it a chance. We'll see what happens. At least they went there. I mean, the third round for your left tackle, usually invest higher up, but okay, we'll see what happens.
And there's guys available still. There's still guys in free agency that are available. If you don't like what you have at left tackle, you can always go out and sign a guy for a game or two. I mean, Lucas is probably your starter going into camp, and he may be the starter get day one. But I mean, if Peters and company are really sold on this kid, he probably will be the starter by the end of the year. He's got a long wingspan. He's a big guy. So I don't know. Maybe he can make that step into the NFL.
They're in the number 100 pick in the third round, Luke McCaffrey. I have to admit, I was a little surprised if that's a friends and family pick kind of thing. I don't know. I don't watch Rice football. But although the common thing I noticed with a lot of these picks too was they played on 3 different college teams. Good Lord. I know the NIL changed things around, but everybody's like 2 years here, a year here. I mean, even Daniels moved around. So yeah, he was in places. So wow, you just wonder, but I don't know. McCaffrey, listen, his father was a great player. His brother's a great player. I just was a little surprised with the third round.
I think this is a pick that is going to lend a lot of, you're going to see McCaffrey a lot with this new kickoff return rule, I think. And also, I mean, hey, Rick, he's 6'2". I mean, he's a pretty big kid. He's fast. And I think he'll probably be a slot receiver on this team. And realistically, outside of Terry and Dotson, what do you have? You have Curtis Samuel went to Buffalo. They didn't sign any wide receivers that I can recall in free agency. And, you still got De'Ami Brown, but De'Ami's been here for 3 seasons and hasn't proven it. 3 seasons and hasn't really proven himself.
So then the lights pretty much go out. And the NFL said, 4th round down is really thin because the NILs kept so many late round picks back in college. More than 100 fewer people came out for the draft and stayed in college, which is really funny that the NFL is now competing with the colleges, doing it. But hey, listen, if you're a late round pick, you probably will do better to stay in college next year. I was surprised how many 6th-year players there were too in this draft because they got COVID as like a freebie. You have medical red shirts and you played 4 years and 6 years of college. You better be Dr. So and so trading them. Yeah, I don't even take enough gen ed classes for 6 years. But anyway, so they didn't have a 4th-rounder or a 6th-rounder. In the 5th, they had 2 people. The Temple linebacker Jordan McGee. People say nice things about him.
Special team.
Yeah, special team. Dominique Hampton, a safety, which they got part of the Philly stuff. It was a Philly pick through Tampa Bay. Oh, God. So anyway, Hampton might be somebody that can scrape by and get on the roster. I'm not sure. And then finally, round 7, Javante Jean-Baptiste, who was an edge guy out of Notre Dame. Okay, he's a big dude, but 7th rounder, I don't know. We'll see if we keep him.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you said, after the 4th round with the NIL and everything going on in college, it's thin pickings. But we'll see. I mean, I do like one thing aside from possibly the McGee and the McCaffrey picks. Every single player is from a big time college football program. You know what I mean? Washington,
yeah,
Notre Dame, Michigan, Illinois, LSU. These are teams that have recently won national championships and are big time programs with NFL experience head coaches. I don't know. Like you said, it's a B. It's a solid B. We hope obviously Jaden is the man and these other kids develop into something that, I think what they're really looking forward to, Rick, is finding a couple starters out of these top guys so that when, guys come around to, for new deals, they can say, thank you, go test the free agency market. I did want to get into free agency real quick because I don't believe we talked too much about it. What was your impressions of free agency? It wasn't necessarily bargain basement. It wasn't the Ron Rivera MO of, hey, sign them cheap, sign guys that play multiple positions. I thought it was very cool bringing in the linebacker from Seattle, Bobby Wagner, as a team leader and someone to be a coach on the field. That was really cool. But yeah, I mean, nobody to really blow you away, but they're building a solid team.
Well, when I really looked at all the contracts and everything, about 1/3 of those, because there was like, I don't know, 21 guys or something. It was crazy. About 1/3 of them are on 1-year show me deals.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You're not tied to them. Probably 2 of those guys will be back the following year. And, Ron's first year, they got a couple guys, Logan Thomas and J.D. McKissick had really good first years. Then they signed them to long-term deals and it didn't work out as much. McKissick got hurt a lot, and so did Logan. So I thought their free agency was decent. This team is going to turn over a good 30 players out of the 53. I went back historically and looked. This will be they might go like 60% roster turnover. They haven't done a 60% roster turnover since 1945. And that's when everybody came back from the war and played. They had 3 years of a really 50, 60% turnovers during the war, because if you were healthy, you were supposed to be in the war, So that's why. So we're talking about something that hasn't happened since World War II on a roster.
Mm-hmm.
That's how much it's going to be flipped. And I think that's why they took team captains. 6 of the 9 draft picks were team captains, which I'd never seen that. Kind of just a quirky thing. But then again, when rookies come in the room, they usually are quiet, because like any job, you kind of watch the lay of the land before you get up. But with this team changing that many people, young players have a chance to be leaders on this team, because who else is left? And I think that was something. I mean, I know they did look at guys for that reason too. You don't draft a guy for that reason, but they look for guys who had that on their resume. And then the free agents, I think they had 5 more that were on the team captains. So, they definitely look for a certain type of guy there.
Yeah, and that was my running theme that I kept referring to was there's a lot of guys that are going to be on this field that are going to be considered leaders on the field. Locker room guys. We heard that a lot during the draft when it came to the Commanders, was they're building a culture of locker room guys both on and off the field. These are guys that are not afraid to speak up, especially when they talk about the corner from Michigan. They said he is not afraid to stand up, and he's not going to be afraid to stand up in that locker room and motivate these guys when they're messing up. He's not. He's going to be he's going to be a leader in the secondary, and that's realistically, Rick, like you said, with the turnover that we've had, that position is wide open. There is no London Fletcher on this team. You know what I mean? Maybe it's Bobby Wagner. He'll be the green dot. He'll be the Mike. And he knows Dan Quinn's system. But realistically, that, like I said, there's no Reggie White, there's no London Fletcher, there's no big name boisterous guy that's walking in that locker room from the previous season. You know what I mean? Maybe Allen, maybe Payne, but we haven't heard that from these guys.
Yeah. So the off schedule ahead, the NFL should release the schedule on May 9th. That's been the best guess kind of thing. The next day, May 10th, they have rookie camp at the park for 3 days. I'm going to hopefully see one of them, and we just see what guys look like. And people always ask me, "Are doing 4-3-3-4?" I mean, we haven't had any chance to see anything. So that's the first one. Then the OTAs start the next week. They do, the next 3 weeks are OTAs basically. Well, actually 4, because it's a new coach to get an extra one. So 4 weeks of 3-day sessions. And then veteran minicamp is June 11 to 13, and then everybody takes off 6 weeks till training camp. I haven't seen a date on that yet because we haven't seen the schedule yet. But end of the month on there. So what are you going to predict for their record? And people go, "What are you, insane?" Well, I grade the draft a minute later. I can do it. We can change our minds. But after the offseason acquisitions, I'm going to 9-8. Let's just be optimistic.
What were they, 4-13 last year? I could see a 3-game improvement. I'll say 7. I'll say 7 wins.
I mean, if I'd be just
last place schedule. I mean, obviously you're going to go through your ups and downs and your growing pains with a rookie quarterback and the big turnover. I think the more important thing is progression, a couple more wins here and there, and see, obviously it's not going to be night and day. They turned this roster almost completely over, which we just talked about. Now you're going to be starting a rookie quarterback. Yeah, I'll say 7-8 wins.
All right, there you go. All right, so there you go. We wrapped up the whole offseason in less than half an hour. Anything else? Anything else you want to talk about before we go back into oblivion?
No, because hockey season's over. My boys didn't make the playoffs and the Caps got swept. So
yeah, Wiz sucked. Nothing there. The Nats are
terrible.
The Nats have been the big surprise on there. Patrick Corbin. Why can't you let this poor man just go home and pay him his money?
Oh my God, Rick, you and I both literally on my Twitter timeline, it was you and then me, and it was like you were like, "Just please, can you cut Patrick Corbin?" And I was at least a little bit nicer. I said, "Patrick, thank you everything you did to win this team a World Series, but it's time to go, brother." But I tell you what, Rick, they came back and won that game after he gave up 6 runs in the first inning. I was shocked. I mean, obviously it's the Marlins. I mean, the Marlins aren't that good this year. But yeah, I mean, it's funny too. My wife is an Orioles fan, so we were watching some of the Orioles Yankees game last night, and I think Soto has 7 home runs, Judge had 6 or something like that. CJ Abrams just hit his 7th home run last night, so he's right up there with these guys that are making 3-4 times as much money as he is.
Yeah, I give it. The Nats found a couple pitchers, not one of which is Josiah Gray, but they found a couple guys that can throw the ball. So I think it's not, crazy. I mean, they were down 7-0 with Corbin, and I turned it off and watched something else. I turned it back on later. It's 10-9 Nats. I'm like, oh man, I missed that. But they've got them playing hard, young kids. If they can just get some pitching, I make Corbin go to the bullpen. Just make them have one bad inning versus all this mess. It's just sad. They let Strasburg go. They should let this guy finally go.
Well, Strasburg retired.
I know. They made him stick around for a long time. I don't know why. It was crazy.
Well, hey, let me ask you this. Obviously the Orioles have changed ownership. One of the big hurdles between Masson and the Nationals was Peter Angelos. He's no longer with us. The team has been sold. Is there a chance now? The new owner has come out and said that he wants to change. He wants to fix this Masson deal with the Nationals. If they could fix this Nationals deal, is that team back up for sale?
I would say probably, yeah.
Because I'm gonna tell you right now, the other learner, the son learner, he's walking onto the field with a cane. he's up there in age. I mean, obviously the dad was in the 90s, if I'm not mistaken. So, what is it? Mark Lerner's the son.
Yeah, and Mark had his leg amputated because of diabetes, so that's
Right.
why he's and all that. I've met him before a few times. Yeah, I mean Daniel Rubenstein, who bought the Orioles, is a big DC guy who funds all the projects, including the Lincoln Memorial. You're seeing all the construction on. They're building a whole museum under the Lincoln Memorial. Daniel Rubenstein paid for that. He's the guy that paid for the Washington Monument to get fixed after the earthquake. I mean, the dude puts up big money projects. Monticello, if you walk in Monticello Jefferson's home, it's the Daniel Rubenstein Visitor Center. I mean, he's an incredible guy. He really is. So the Orioles were lucky to get someone like him. And I know they're thinking, wow, you got an owner in his 70s. How long will he be here? Well, I don't know. People are living longer now. So maybe they have him 10, 20 years like that. But I think it was definitely a great thing for the O's.
Mm-hmm.
And, as Maryland, versus knocking down a bridge, in Baltimore. Good Lord. Baltimore needed something good. And I'm glad because the Orioles fans, I grew up watching the Orioles a lot in the 70s. They were great. Orioles fans were diehards. It's just they beat them to death like the Commanders fans got beat to death.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of similarities there.
Nice that they're getting something back, fine. So maybe this team gets back too, and we can all skip around Washington, Baltimore, Beltway and be happy. Traffic. I don't know what traffic's like in Baltimore now, but
you'll never get me to root for the Ravens though.
Yeah, they're a very good team though. I mean, they're well run.
They are a very well run team. They are a good team, but you will never get me to. They're the Cleveland Browns.
But you're a Marylander.
I live closer to DC than I do to Maryland or to Baltimore, I should say.
Oh,
I could be at Nats Park in 30 minutes. It'll take me an hour and a half to get to Baltimore.
Yeah, all right. Balmer. I understand right.
Balmer, hun, with the O's and the natty bows.
There you go. All right. On that note, we're out of here. Oh, I forgot to mention, no one's watching now. Here's my new book in case you do want to buy it, Presidential Pours, which is about all the presidents and drinking. It's kind of a small book, so you can drink. Got pictures, all that. Get it on Amazon. We'll just call it that. But Presidential Pours. That's something I did my off-season time.
I have one. It's pretty cool. Some of the most recent presidents are pretty lame. Trump liked Diet Coke. Joe Biden talks about how he likes diet soda. Like none of these guys drink anymore, man. Come on, I need some George Washingtons with some mead and putting hair on his chest with his wig on.
Oh yeah, George was a rager, dude.
I know you told me. You told me about the mead factory or whatever that they opened up at his house.
Oh yeah, I mean George Washington became the richest man in America by selling whiskey after his presidency. So, and John Adams started every day with a shot of cider at 5 a.m. And I said, you can't drink all day if you don't start in the morning. So, and Jefferson went bankrupt over booze. So, colonials, man, they were toasting their success of not getting hung by having a revolution on that.
And those stories and more are in Presidential Pours by Rick Snyder.
There you go. So it's something fun I wanted to write, and I didn't want to do another.
It's a cool book. Rick sent me one.
Guide book. So, something different. I actually do tours with it now. We're doing one coming up. I got a guy that's turning 21 the day of the tour, so we can go drinking. So, okay, we'll party like George, something like that.
You'll be calling that kid an Uber by 4 o'clock.
Yeah. Oh, hey, you got to learn somehow. I'm sure he has. Could drink at 21. I don't know. All right, we're out of here. I'm Rick Snyder.
I'm Matt.
See you soon.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Seasons of Discontent with your hosts Rick Snyder and Matt Combs.